All right, here's Tricia Rose Burt telling a wonderful story from her performance at the Moth.
Growing up, Daddy liked things to be in their place. He alphabetized our spices, he labeled our pantry, and he used one of those dial-o-matic labeler things, spreads, dried goods, popcorn popper. And just like the items in the pantry, Daddy needed my older brother and sister and me to be in our place too. Now, I adored Daddy, even though his need for order and discipline could seem sort of suffocating sometimes. But it was predictable, and there was a kind of comfort in that. I mean, I knew what Daddy expected of me, and I knew what to expect from Daddy. Not surprisingly, there was a very particular way we were to decorate the Christmas tree. Every year, we got a Douglas fir, about 10 feet tall, and we decorate it with those really big Christmas bulbs you don't see much anymore, those great big ones in primary red and blue and green, kind of an orangey yellow, maybe some white. And we'd match these big bulbs up with reflectors. Reflectors were supposed to make the bulbs glow more. And we'd put reflectors over each socket, and then we would methodically screw in each bulb one by one in this long string of lights. And we paid the same kind of attention to the rest of the tree. We had these decorative fake birds, and Daddy would tell us to adjust the birds' wings so they looked like they were in proper flight. Tinsel was placed, never tossed. It was like we were preparing an altar. And the most sacred elements of all were the Debbie ball, the Jimmy ball, and the Tricia ball. Now, the Debbie ball and the Jimmy ball and the Tricia ball were ornaments that Daddy made for us when we were really little, and they're all made out of the same thing. It's a white styrofoam ball, about the size of a tennis ball, with colored sequins, all adhered with silver straight pins. And on the Tricia ball, on the circumference of the Tricia ball, Daddy spelled out my name neatly in all capital letters, each precisely 5 sequins tall. And he used 4 colors: blue, gold, red, green, always in that order. And the colors were never mixed. The letter T was all blue, the letter R all gold, the letter I all red, so on. At the top of the Tricia ball was a ring of red sequins around the ornament hook. And at the bottom of the Tricia ball was a ring of green sequins, with a single green sequin placed right where you'd find the South Pole on a globe. I mean, this is exactly the kind of detail that you would expect from a man who labeled his pantry. And I treasured the Tricia ball. Each year, my brother and sister and I hung our ornaments with great ceremony. And as a family, I just thought we were at our best decorating the Christmas tree. I mean, it was always magnificent. Then when I turned 16, my family enters into the throes of a social scandal that just turns all order into chaos. Daddy declares bankruptcy. And it was an honest mistake. He was a real estate developer who specialized in historic preservation. And he had been restoring this neighborhood that was really vibrant when he was growing up, but had gotten run down over the years. And I mean, his vision was big and his motive was pure, but it all came together just in time for the 1974-75 recession. The headlines in our local paper read, "Iranian Shah loses riches," right next to "Prominent Realtor declares bankruptcy." All Mama could say was, "We don't have any money for groceries. Go eat at the country club." Now, no one ever really talked about money in my household, and they certainly weren't going to talk to me about it. So I'm just sort of frantically trying to piece together all these mixed messages, and the best I can come up with is we're supposed to be very afraid and very ashamed. And the thing is, my mother was just as smart as Daddy, if not smarter, but they had that unwritten contract where Mama would provide the children and Daddy would provide financial security. But thanks to bad timing, Daddy wasn't living up to his end of the bargain. But Mama was raised that her very survival depended on a man and his money, and so she was scared to death and just blamed Daddy for everything. Now, along with losing his money, my father loses his mind and starts seeing a woman that we called Pigface. Her real name sounded just as bad. It was like she was destined to be a homewrecker from birth. I mean, she was attractive enough in a cheap, coarse kind of way, and was a walking stereotype. She was 15 years younger than my father at least, had dyed blonde hair. I mean, she was a fairly large woman, and just everything about her was big. I mean, she had this big jewelry and big hair, big patterns and prints on her clothes. I mean, she was from Texas, and as they say, this was not her first rodeo. So once Daddy starts seeing Pigface, my parents separate, and I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and at the time, I'm the only one at home during all this drama. And the stress is just so intense that in 1 week, I lose 10 pounds because I can't sit down at the dining room table long enough to eat. So when Daddy leaves, I'm actually kind of relieved. And the first thing Mama does when Daddy leaves is to go into the pantry and rip all the labels off the shelves. Then a couple of months later, the bank comes to repossess the house because our mortgage hasn't been paid. And there's my mother, age 45, asking the banker standing in the doorway, "And a mortgage would be what?" My mom had a little stash of family money, so the house wasn't repossessed, but she did spend the first year of the separation drugged on the living room couch, thanks to a psychiatrist who prescribed 3 5-milligram Valiums a day. So Mama is obviously completely retreating. Daddy's basically living with Pigface and her 2 children, which makes me feel like he didn't just leave Mama, he left me too. And the whole thing is just so hurtful and absurd. I mean, I don't even recognize my parents. They're like pod people. And I don't recognize my life. It's like all the order's been ripped away, like the labels in the pantry, and no one is paying attention to me. I suppose if I'd had some, wild side, I could have had this crazy, reckless high school experience, but I was raised to be so good that I just kept overachieving and thinking maybe if I make an A, someone will notice me. My parents' separation lasted for 3 endless years. And the first Christmas of the separation, my mother announces she never did like colored lights and reflectors, and she replaces them with little white lights. Tinsel is abandoned altogether. The decorative fake birds are flying wildly in all directions. My brother and sister and I keep just hanging our ornaments with great ceremony, and the tree still looks magnificent. I mean, maybe even more so as we try to create some kind of beauty in the wreckage that is our family. Daddy and his girlfriend on one side, Mom on the other, and us 3 kids in the middle just trying to dodge the bullets. My parents are exhausting me. Every Christmas, we'd have to spend some time with Daddy and his girlfriend, and she'd show up with that big pig face hair of hers, and we'd all be sitting around wondering how we were going to answer Mama's question, was that woman there? And Daddy would just glare at us, expecting us to behave, and I'm having a really tough time taking him seriously because this once methodical, measured, conservative man is now wearing a gold chain, driving a lime green Eldorado, and dating a woman who is exactly the opposite of what he raised me to be. And maybe it's because there's just all this pain that we don't want to see, but during the separation, we play a lot of fake family. Fake family is when Daddy would come over for dinner or holidays, and we'd act like he didn't have a whole other life and stand-in family. And my favorite fake family Christmas is when he stayed for a really long time with us 3 kids and Mama, and we couldn't figure out why. And then we found out that Pigface was really mad at Daddy because she thought she was getting an engagement ring for Christmas, and instead he gave her a blender. So 4 years after my parents finally divorce, my sister gets engaged, and we're ecstatic. We love who she's about to marry, and after all these years of bitterness between my parents, my family can use some good news and a fresh start. And I want to do a really nice toast at the rehearsal dinner, but I'm really nervous, and I'm not nervous about standing up in front of people. I mean, obviously like that. I'm nervous because it's the first time in years we're going to try to act like a family in public. And I'm not sure that my parents can behave. So I want to do a really nice toast for my sister, but I don't have any ideas. I can't come up with anything. And a good friend of mine says, well, do you have any family traditions? I'm like, the only tradition we have is avoiding my father's girlfriend and my parents' animosity. And he pushes me a little further and he says, are you sure? And then I get an idea. At the rehearsal dinner, I walk up to the podium and I say, in my family, we have an important tradition. And I can see Debbie and Jimmy and Mama and Daddy looking at each other like, what is she talking about? So we have an important tradition that I want my brother-in-law to be a part of. And even close friends of the family who witnessed this explosion are going, really? And I hold up this styrofoam ball with my brother-in-law's name neatly spelled out in all capital letters. And there's this collective gasp among my family, and Daddy gets this really big smile on his face. And it's all I can do not to tear up. Daddy's been gone for years now, but there are Christmas balls for all 3 of the kids' spouses and all 6 of the grandchildren. I've been meaning to make one for my dog because my husband and I don't have children, which is okay. I mean, it's what's best for us, but it is different. It raises all kinds of questions around legacy and what we pass on. I mean, the fate of the Tricia ball is anybody's guess. But I still hang my ornament every year with great ceremony because even though I don't know who the Tricia ball is going to, it always reminds me of where I come from. Thank you.